Week 11 preview. Lots of big games to talk through this week. A couple of really, really big ones. Corey, I'll just go ahead and open the floor to you. What do you want to do? We want to go chronologically throughout, like the Saturday slate, the midweek? I don't know if
Let's
there's
go
anything that we really want.
chronological. I
Okay,
like chronological. It's always fun.
okay. Do you have anything in the midweek you really want to touch on other than like
Boise State isn't playing on a Friday night, so I don't care. And other than that, there's nothing else going on that I care about.
bingo, bingo? Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I have a ton to add. It's kind of no like awesome mid-major games that jump out at me, like New Mexico, San Diego State. I'll probably tune into that Friday night if I don't have anything else going on, just because why not? Um, but watch Bronco Mendenhall's boys, and San Diego State's got a new starting QB, true freshman. He was recruited to Colorado, but then followed the offensive coordinator, gosh, whose name is now Sean Lewis. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was that yeah? So he was at Colorado, then became the head coach at San Diego State, and now he's starting there. And he looks like a legit one. Looks like they got one. So uh, that's more for the future. Ohio State, Purdue. I
Yeah.
don't know if I have anything to say about this except
The team's 3, 4, and 5 all play early morning games, so we get to see if anybody trips up quickly and early that week or early that
yeah.
day. So
And it sure feels like. Tell me if you feel the same way. It feels like it's almost like I've heard people make the argument that free throws on college basketball, which has just started up, like free throws are sort of contagious, right? If one guy misses one early in the game, it feels like the entire team tightens up and gets a little nervous when they step up to the line to shoot a pair, and then all of a sudden they start missing, and it just kind of comes in waves. So you see one of these teams struggle early. I don't know what it is. There's probably nothing to it, but just like it just seems like, oh, it's going to be one of those Saturdays. We just got one. I don't know if we get another one here. I think the real intrigue for me in the noon slate is Miami and Georgia Tech. I don't know. Well, of course, you can't talk about this year's game without going back to last year's game where all kinds of shenanigans broke out in the last minute and a half of that game, and I, yeah, like not even the last minute. I guess it was the last minute, like the last 40 seconds. Like they didn't have to snap the ball, and and tip my cap to gosh, Hasselbeck, not Matt, the other one,
yeah,
Tim
yeah.
Hasselbeck,
He did a great job in that.
who called it out right in the moment, like they should not be running this ball. But yeah, a chance for redemption for Mario Cristobal. I don't feel like the team needs redemption. I feel like the coach needs it. On the road now at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech started off pretty strong and has kind of faded down the stretch. And of course, they've had some injuries to deal with. Primary among those being Haynes King, who I don't know if he's expected to play in this game or not. I don't believe he is.
I don't think he's expected to be back yet.
So that to me is a little surprising to see the spread moving in Georgia Tech's direction. I think this opened at 13.5. Right now I have it at 12.
I'm seeing 11 on GameCat draft or sports
DraftKings.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are the sports draft whatever things? There's a million betting places now.
That's right. So I'm a little surprised at that. It's a noon game. It's not like at night. It's not a particularly challenging environment. Like say Bobby Dodd Stadium is maybe not the most intimidating venue for a ranked team to come into.
Don't tell Florida State that.
Well, yeah, we're a special kind of stupid when it comes to things like that. But so that one's got my attention. I think the most. I still don't think. I'm not that worried for Miami in that game. I think that they're gonna have they're gonna be focused on Georgia Tech, and kind of putting last year's game behind them. So we'll see what happens there. Anything else in the noon slate really jump out at you as like of note? I mean, of course,
so I looked up
keep an eye on some of them, but
Haynes King is not officially out on that game, so there's a chance he could come back in that game, but we'll see. On the noon slate, nothing major jumps out to me. To be frank, it's just the fact that you have 3, 4, and 5, and depending on which game's going to be closest, I'm going to flip to that game.
That's right. So. Yeah, the focus will shift on that. It's really
Something
that
the 3:30 slate. You got Michigan, Indiana. You got Georgia, Ole Miss. Like that's where the meat's gonna be, and
yeah,
it's gonna be a lot of.
this is where the games get interesting. I think even like Iowa going on the road at Kansas, which again they're playing at Arrowhead Stadium, not in Lawrence, Kansas. They're playing in Kansas City, Missouri. But Iowa State is only a 3-point favorite to the 2-6 Jayhawks in what will be probably a pro Iowa State crowd, if I'm guessing, just
Oh,
because.
for sure. I imagine.
But yeah, you know, the once favorite in the league versus kind of the bottom of the barrel in the league outside of Oklahoma State, and it's a 3-point spread. So Iowa State, do they get up off the mat? I don't know, but there's and then a sneaky good one that's maybe not on the radar, like Duke NC State. You see NC State CJ Bailey have an insane game last week.
I did not.
Okay, so I only have seen the stats. I have not seen a single highlight from the game. Let me read you his stats real quick from their win versus Stanford. So first of all, they win the game 59-28. So substantial, right? Like I know Stanford's not particularly good, but like that's that's pretty insane. He's 18 of 20 for 234 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, as a true freshman, I might add, this is the high school quarterback that was throwing to JoJo Trader and Jeremiah Smith down in Miami. So, like, I think part of the reason he was maybe a little under recruited was people were trying to like discount the fact it's like, hey, he has 2 5-star wide receivers he gets to throw to every single week. So we need to take his film evaluation with a little bit of a grain of salt, knowing that their catch radiuses are both pretty impressive, and what they're going to do after the catch is going to make his numbers look really, really special too. But in his own right, playing excellent ball.
But that Stanford team is terrible, and they should never have even beaten Syracuse. So let's be
True,
frank.
true. Um, but I just think that one's like, it's a rivalry game. It's at Carter Finley, and you have this late season emergence of a true freshman QB at NC State, which it feels like, I mean, not necessarily the true freshman emerging at the end of the year, but like, it feels like we've seen this movie before where NC State like has a bad year but there's like glimmers of hope toward the end of it that'll get them really jacked for the next year, only for that cycle to kind of repeat. Like I
Yeah.
remember when this happened with, gosh, who was their quarterback? They transferred to Kentucky and last
Oh,
year.
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep,
What's his name?
yeah, I can't remember his name, but if you want to Google it, fine. If not, no worries on that. But I remember when he was a true freshman or a redshirt freshman, right toward the end of one of their seasons for the last couple
Kevin
of
Leary.
games. Devin Leary, thank you. Their last couple of games, I think his redshirt freshman year, he played pretty well, and they're like, oh, very excited going into the next year, and he played pretty well, and then I think he broke his collarbone, and so like that next season got derailed, and so I feel like NC State's probably toward that part where they're the anticipation over the next couple games will build for the next year. We'll see if it ends up going off a cliff like it has in the past for them or not. But just wanted to call that one out as another game that I'll keep my eye on. South Carolina Vandy, fascinating game. We talked about this a little bit last episode. I have no idea where this one's going, but I will be paying attention.
Yeah, in Colorado, Texas Tech is kind of the same way. Does Texas Tech keep rolling? Does Colorado slam the door shut? Be interesting to see this.
Yeah, yeah. I got more on that one later.
Okay,
So we'll talk about that one in a little bit. Uh, Anything else in the afternoon, or should we shift to the night?
let's shift to
Schedule.
night.
Okay, so the premier matchup that everyone's looking for: Oklahoma State TCU.
Yes,
That's what
exactly.
we're here for. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, I'll pay attention to that game a little bit. Again, I have a brother-in-law that now works in the athletic department at Oklahoma State. I have not asked him, but I imagine they're starting to crunch some numbers on buyouts.
I don't know, man. Gundy's a lifer. He always survives.
I know. I think that one's a problem. All right, let's talk about the real one. Bama LSU. What? How do you see this playing out?
Night game in Bama, or sorry, night game in Baton Rouge. Which Nussmeyer are we going to get? Are we going to get the Nussmeyer that handed the ball over to the other team, we're getting the Nussmeier that balled out at the beginning of the year. And which Alabama defense are we going to get? Are we going to get the Alabama defense that's been a sieve lately or previously, or it started to lock it up a little bit? I think you and I are both at one point in time we thought this was going to be a very, very high scoring game. I still think it's probably going to be a high scoring game. But yeah, and Kalen DeBoer, does he call it? Does he call the game, in his favor of running Milroe and putting them in a position to win, or does he have Milroe throw too much? I mean, I'll be frank. I have some thoughts around this game that I'll share later, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm fascinated for a lot of the reasons that you highlighted. I think that LSU has a passing offense that should give the Bama secondary some real challenges. I think LSU maybe doesn't have the pass rushers to really affect Alabama if they want to throw the ball down the field. I also think I think we talked about this a couple of weeks or a couple of podcasts ago when after Marcel Reed carved up the LSU defense in the second half for A&M, I'm pretty sure Kalen DeBoer was licking his chops, being like, okay, perfect. I've got a better version of Marcel Reed. I've got a bigger, more physical, faster QB that can create some problems. So if LSU hasn't fixed it in the bye week, I think we'll find out pretty quick. And that could end up being a really interesting deciding factor in the game. Like this game is fascinating to me. I said last week I expected this total to be kind of in the 60s. I think I set the total at, for me, where'd it go? At 68, which in retrospect is maybe a little high, but I still think the 58.5 is surprisingly low.
I would
So,
agree with that.
we'll talk about that later. But I think both offenses have the advantage against the opposing defense. And like home field, I think will be important, but this isn't Jalen Milroe's first rodeo in terms of facing a hostile crowd.
Exactly.
He's won on the road at Kyle Field. He's won on the road. Oh, I guess that one. Never
You won
mind.
at Texas, right? Last year?
No,
No.
they lost,
Oh,
and they were at home.
that's right.
Yeah, okay. Maybe it was just the Kyle Field. I thought I had in my head so they didn't win at Tennessee. They won at home against Tennessee last year. Yeah, so we'll see. I think that this is one that's going to be really exciting. Like I'm going to be locked in on that game because if I lock in on the Florida State Notre Dame game, I might go crazy. Just being an FSU fan. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that Florida State Notre Dame game, or did I jump too fast from the Bama LSU one?
I think it's fine to go to that game. I think the line is 26. I do see that score kind of being around 35-10. Like that's exactly kind of what I expect it to be.
I don't think FSU scores 10.
I think their defense is better, but I think they might let. I think their defense is better than North Carolina's for sure, but I could see them letting up something at the end.
Maybe. All right. Yeah.
Like I agree. This Florida State team is a conundrum,
Trash.
And I've seen a lot of talk about fire Norvell. I've kind of always been like, oh no, like keep Norvell around. This is not his fault. I think I'm over that. And I'm like, how do you let your team fall apart that much? You either didn't make a good evaluation on your coaches, which I don't think you did, and then you're making poor evaluations on your players. Apparently, I mean, you look at Patrick Payton, who's all ACC last year, and he's struggled this year. And I think that's probably because you had the All-American on the other side that everybody had to double team, and so he got one-on-one opportunity.
Yeah, wasn't the focal point of the offensive lines.
Yeah, I mean you had Braden Fisk and Verse who are both starting for the Rams, and both had sacks.
Playing well, yeah, they're playing real well.
And honestly, Peyton's lost himself some money by staying this year.
A ton, I would say. Yeah, it's a problem. So I'm right there with you. I think that this is one that gets out of hand. I think it's basically over as soon as it's kicked. But
oh yeah,
but yeah, we'll see what changes come about. I don't know if I'm on the fire Norvell train just yet. I mean, like I think it's a fireable offense what he's done, right?
Yeah.
Like 1-8 is just like that's there's no excuse for that. I just wonder from a finances perspective, like,
You can't pull another Willie right now.
yeah, exactly. And you just committed to him this last offseason where it's like, oof, he played you like a fiddle. Uh,
Perhaps
anyway, it's all bad. Um, to
BYU Utah next.
We could do that one. I was gonna take a second to talk Washington Penn State.
Yeah, you and your Washington fandom. Okay, go
All
ahead.
right, all right. Let's go Huskies. I don't feel good about this one, guys. Though, again, you're traveling all the way across the country. It's a 3 hour uh, 3 hour time difference, so that's tough to overcome. Penn State at night, but at the same time, like, hey, if you make this thing close, like, I think those fans will start to turn. I think those fans will start to like watch, be in a tight game at half, Washington, and you're gonna see like that, those fans are starting to get restless. I think there's just a couple of kind of things where the frustration with where Penn State can't get over the hump. There's a chance for you to do something about it. I don't know if you quite have the firepower offensively to do it. I wonder how well your offensive line is going to hold up against Penn State's defensive line. But yeah, they're like you said, they're not a team that's going to run away from you. That's going to run up the score to a point where you're going to be out of the game really quickly. Like you said this last pod, Corey. So Washington, if you can spring a few things, and Jedfish can scheme it pretty well. I don't think so, but I just want to give him the shout out. Last week should have been the night game against Ohio State in Beaver Stadium. Didn't happen. Sorry, you're going to have to face the wrath of that crowd. But if you're able to go up early and get them a little worried, you may end up having that crowd on your side where they're going to want to boo their own team.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But I also said they were not going to beat USC, and they did. So
Yeah.
it helps when
All right.
the opposing quarterback throws 3 interceptions too.
Okay. Yeah. We can talk Holy War now.
All right, where do you see this going, dude?
I will tell you, I like if I am Kalani Sitake, if I'm in the coaching in the meeting rooms at BYU, I am telling my team, hey, don't give this game to them because they're going to give it to us. Uh, at some point, they will. Like Isaac Wilson's a turnover machine right now. He keeps throwing the ball to the wrong team. I think the more he plays, the less confident he is. So like you don't even have to take a whole lot of risks, right? You can just run the football, and if it's not there, like tell Jake Retz, like, hey, if it's not there, don't force it. There will be ample time for us to take advantage because I think if you play what you've been doing defensively, if you're able to get some pressure on Isaac Wilson, and teams have been able to do that. I know he's got a pretty good offensive line in front of him, but when they've been able to kind of load up against the run and force him to throw, he's not done a good job of reading the field. Uh, I think this is one that you can win and be pretty conservative in. Now, I'm not saying I necessarily expect them to do that. They're pulling out trick plays against UCF and halfback passes against Oklahoma State. Teams pretty low on the Big 12 standings. Not as low as Utah. Oh, I guess Oklahoma State is, but like they're neighbors, right? They're next door neighbors in the standings, and so I would expect BYU to have one or two tricks up their sleeve. I'm going to call this one, right? I and I don't know if you pull it out here or not, but their tight end Reiner Swanson, he's a true freshman. He looks the part. Number one, that guy's going to be a player. But most of the time right now, when he comes in the game, he comes in for one or two plays and he's targeted on those plays. I'm waiting for them to bring him in and do some sort of like fake screen to him, like where he's like maybe comes in motion, goes as a tight end, and it looks like a tight end like bubble screen, but they go deep with one of the receivers that sort of feigns blocking for half a second and takes it deep. I'm calling that. I am not like I don't get to watch practice. I'm not. There's no trade secrets being played out here, but it's that I wouldn't stun me if they pulled something out like that either in this game or maybe a little bit later down the road. But if I'm BYU, I'm saying, hey, let's run the football. Let's load up against the run. Don't let Mekhi Bernard beat you because he's a very talented back. Utah is really physical, so dedicate some extra resources to that. Especially with, I don't know if you saw that Money Parks, the wide receiver for Utah, is out for the season. Like
Nope.
they don't have a ton in that wide receiver room that gives me a lot of heartburn. So I would dedicate extra resources to the run. Brant Keithy's a matchup problem. I think he's still playing. I know that I'm pretty sure he's still playing. I'm going to get that wrong, but like, I think there's a lot of ways that BYU can win this game. And really what you just can't do is turn the ball over. Just don't turn the ball over. Be smart with it. I think you have the advantage in the kicking game. I think you have the advantage um, when it comes to playing Utah's offense, knowing how dependent they are on the run thus far. Like, unless you got to make Isaac Wilson or Rose, I can't remember his first name, the other QB, make them beat you with your arm or with their arms, right? Like, if you're gonna lose, like, and they can make the throws, like, hey, great, tip your cap to them. I don't think they can. So that's what I would make them prove to begin the game. I'm interested to see if BYU can run the football on Utah's defensive front. For what all you can say about Utah and their shortcomings, that defensive line is still very, very, very talented. Um, and so that to me is the one place that I see it. If Utah is able to kind of neutralize BYU running the football and forces them into passing situations, I like the advantages that Utah has on the defensive ends versus BYU's tackles. Like, I think they win that, and I think they win that battle pretty decidedly. So I think it's important for BYU to establish the run. But also, I think you can kind of wait Utah out and just wait till one of those freshman quarterbacks turns the ball over in his own territory, take advantage of turnovers like you have all year, and just kind of wait for them to hand the game to you. So don't make any mistakes yourself. Hold out on that. I, it's hard for me outside of it being a rivalry game and being a Utah home game. It's hard for me to see them winning this game because they just don't score points. That's a problem. It's a real problem. And
Yeah.
BYU is not a great offense, but like they score. They've been able to score on decent defenses. I think this is the best defense they will have faced this year. But I don't see this game being a blowout. But I have a hard time seeing Utah win it just because they can't score points. So unless there's special teams or points off of turnovers, like literally like point defensive scores or setting their offense up with very short fields that they're able to cash in on, it's hard for me to see a lot of ways where Utah moves the ball consistently down the field against BYU's defense, which is good, not great, but like I don't trust Utah's offense at all.
Utah's offense hasn't scored more than 22 points since Utah State, which was like their third game of the season.
Yeah.
I'm a little different than you. If I'm BYU, I need to score quickly and get up 14-0, 14-3 fast. If you can get up that way,
Oh, they'll quit. Yeah.
yeah, and
They'll
also
know that they have no chance.
You just lean on the run, and they're not good enough to beat you in the pass to actually beat you. So if I'm Utah or if I'm BYU, I'm calling a bunch of run pass kind of combinations. They've done a very good job of mixing the two as they've gone through. You watch their drives. You don't really know what's going to come from their how they handle themselves. You don't know whether it's going to be pass or a run, and I think that combination keep them on their toes. Go score 2 touchdowns, and then you're up and running this game. I honestly think that BYU could blow this team out, especially if they can score 14 points in the first quarter. So.
Okay, that's probably true. Like blowout, I think is maybe something that we need to define here. But I think that they can win comfortably for sure because if you go up by 14 points, I think at some point the Utah defensive line's like, well, we can't score points, or if we do, it's like a strip stack fumble. Which how many of those are we going to be able to do? Like, yeah, exactly. But it's just like I think that's the best unit on either team, and they're fortunately not one that scores points. So if you go up multiple scores, I think that's one where it's like, all right, the doubt starts to set in. And again, I wouldn't say necessarily that they quit, but that they just kind of, it's demoralizing when it's like, okay, I could play a perfect game from this point forward, from whenever you go up 2 scores to the end of the game, and we're still probably not going to have a real chance of coming back. So
if this game is close, I can see Utah pulling this one out. To be honest, like if they can keep it tight,
yeah. there's a reason it's a 4-point spread, right? Like, so I tend to agree with that. It's just more like I think it is a close game. It's hard for me to see Utah really winning in a close game when, again, at most of the margins, I feel like BYU, like, if it is a close game, then field position comes into play. And I think, I admittedly, like, I haven't paid a ton of attention toward the punting game of Utah, which maybe I should, given how much they punt nowadays. But, like, I mean, BYU's good in the punting game. They're good in the kicking game. Like, they have got a good, reliable kicker who's reliable from deep. Like, I think most of the margins lean BYU. It's just like, all right, rivalry games, they get weird a lot, and you're on the road, and it'll be a hostile crowd, I think. But we'll see. We'll see. I know a lot of people were kind of selling tickets, and so I don't know if BYU fans gobbled those up and are going to make the trip up. It's not far, right? But we'll see. I'm fascinated to see it. It would be excellent, just like, oh, we're going to run the Big 12 to, no, you don't even run the state, actually, for the Utah fans that were awful boisterous all off season about how they were better than this league and that this was beneath them and we won the Pac-12 and all that. Well, great. Yeah. Well, it's a new year. So, welcome to the new world. Yeah. So I think I'm calling for a BYU victory. I don't, it's one that they probably have to sweat out. It's a rivalry game. They're going to give their all, but I just think ultimately you're a better team than they are at this point with who's available. Any other games you want to cover? Sorry,
Nothing else.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think there's some other sneaky good ones on here, like Arizona State getting Sam Levitt back pretty quick was good. I think that's big news for them. Again, they're on the outside looking in on the Big 12 race, but 6-2. I think they've got their QB of the future. They're recruiting pretty well for what they've done in the last little bit. I'm excited to see what Arizona State has, for the rest of the season. And, BYU has to travel to Tempe in a couple of weeks. Could be trouble.
Yeah, their win
Could be
total
real
is like
trouble.
4.5, 5, I think.
Something like that. So they're playing with house money at this point at Arizona State, but I think they still have some meat on the bone for
100%.
for a few more wins. So good for them. Should we roll into picks?
Let's do it.
Alrighty.
For the first time in a while, you're excited to roll into picks.
Well, yeah, because I had a heck of a week. I don't know if you noticed that or not. Sorry, let me get this open so that I didn't actually have this. Should I have this open before?
No, you're okay. I can go over my picks a little bit this week while you're pulling that up.
It'll only take me a second.
I call Florida State to lose to UNC. That hit. I called the under. Thankfully, UNC didn't continue to pour it on. So that hit. Let's see. I called Florida to cover against UGA. That hit. Much to the chagrin of at the end of UGA trying to put on some extra points, man. The line was 16 that I called, and they won by 14. I missed Kansas State, Houston pulling the upset in that one. Oregon beating Michigan significantly in that game. Navy Rice game was delayed forever, and I imagine that probably played a factor in that being such a poor performance from Navy. But they got beat by Rice pretty handily. Washington USC was watching that final drive pretty closely, even though it would have had to take a 2-point conversion maybe to get it to 3. So sad about that, but it is what it is. And then South Carolina, I called that one, and then Oklahoma allowed Maine to score first, but ended up covering. So there you go. I go 6-3 on the week. Still another positive week, and from what I see, I'm up 14 games over 500.
Yeah, just killing it. Well done, sir. Yeah, this week was good to me too. I felt pretty good about all these. Probably should have maybe said that confidence a little bit more on the last pod, but I felt pretty good about them all. And even that Tennessee Kentucky one, like, I can't remember what the score was at half, but I was like, oh yeah, we're doing this. Tennessee's or Kentucky's defense just kind of gave out at the end.
Yeah, I think it was like 10-7 at half.
Yeah, I felt really good about that one. I was like, oh man, I might get the clean sweep this week. But yeah, UNC, like FSU, whatever the point is, just lay them. It doesn't matter. Just fade the Noles because they're terrible and they don't care. And the program's in shambles and all the other things you want to say. UCF, I think they found something in this new QB. And combine that with Arizona kind of being on quit watch, Oklahoma State also on quit watch, USC Washington under 55.5. This started to get a little squirrely again. I needed 2 goal line stands at the end to prevent this one from going over. Um, but heading, it was at 27 points at half. USC had only scored 1 touchdown. I was like, okay, I'm feeling good about this. Washington will try and salt away the game. And USC started moving the football really fast by running it. And I was like, oh no, like running the football is great, but not running it when you're getting 10, 11 yards a clip. And so it got a little squirrely. Iowa -3 at Wisconsin felt like easy money again. Iowa scores points. Wisconsin doesn't against anyone of note. And Iowa's defense maybe isn't what it has been in the past, but it's still an Iowa defense. So those are my picks for this last week, and I am first on the T box. I'm 6 games above 500, which is like unprecedented. So
Also, you were half a point away from Tennessee, Kentucky. It was 46 was the total.
yeah,
It's a rough.
Brutal. But they did go over it with like 10 minutes left, right? So it's like, I think something like that. It was like, it got to the point where it's like, okay, I know that this one's not, the game was still going on. And it's like, all right, it's already gone over. But I've got a host of these. And double check my lines because, again, I look at these kind of earlier in the week and sometimes there's a little bit of movement. So Miami goes to Georgia Tech -11.
That's what I had.
Yeah, don't care. The Hurricanes are going to cover that number. So give me Miami to cover against Georgia Tech. And if they don't, they're probably losing the game, right? Like, yeah, this is going to go one way or the other. But I'm pretty confident that Miami gets revenge against Georgia Tech, covers the spread, and puts to bed one of the more embarrassing performances of Mario Cristobal's career last year. South Florida +3 at home versus Navy. I think Navy's like, is it Sir George and the dragon where like he realizes that he's not invincible and then the next dragon eats him?
I'm not sure.
I think that there's some like old like fairy tale about this knight that's given like some sort of magic word that he says before he goes into battle against dragons, and then the person who like the wizard who tells him says like, hey, there's actually nothing special about it. It just gave you confidence, and the next time he dies. And so I feel like once Navy lost against Notre Dame, things really turned. So the Rice game wasn't good. I'm betting that continues. South Florida figured some things out against Florida Atlantic. So
did you see the
give
handshake,
me.
by the way?
Oh my gosh, yes, I love it. Like I have no problem. Like, hey, if you want to be a jerk during the handshake, whatever. Like, especially if the guy like runs up the score against you last year. Like, hey, you knew this was coming, Pete. Like to quote like Spider-Man 2 or 3, Spider-Man 3, yeah, you knew this was coming, Pete. Like, hey, like you did this last year. You set yourself up for this last year. You set it up where I wanted to win this game extra bad, and now that I have, I'm going to do what I want. So yeah, I had no problem with Golish giving him the and then quickly out of there.
I'm seeing the line at 3.5, but if you saw 3 earlier, take it.
I did, but no, I'm okay with a 3.5. I don't think that's going to make a difference here. I know it's an important number, but all the same. Michigan, Indiana, which we didn't really talk about this game, except like we're excited to see it.
Yep.
Under 49 points. I think Michigan still plays pretty good defense. I'm surprised to see that. Is it a 14-point spread at this point? It opened at like 11.5, and I feel like all the money's come on Indiana.
Yep, 14.
So I mean, I could see them covering that. I could really see them. I mean, they just blow everyone out. That's kind of what they do. But I think the biggest thing is that Michigan probably isn't going to score a whole lot of points, but I think they will hold Indiana under their point total, or under the point total for the two teams. The concern here is the health of Michigan's secondary. I think both of their starting defensive backs were out last week against Oregon. Again, probably a different level athlete that you're getting at Oregon, so I think they'll still be able to kind of keep this. So under 49 total points for Michigan and Indiana. I do think Indiana wins. I still am like very much rooting for Indiana to win.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see Indiana in the playoff. Like, how cool would that be?
Yeah.
Ole Miss. What's the spread there?
I'm seeing 2.5.
2.5. Oh, bummer. So Ole Miss is +2.5.
Yep.
Yeah, I like the Rebs in this one. I mean, I just need the defensive line to show up and make Carson Beck keep throwing the football, who does not feel like he's seeing the field very well right now. And I think you got a chance. I think, again, your offense is going to have to play the game of its life. It rarely shows up against these physical teams. I don't know. Just got an inkling. I feel like Ole Miss is due one here. So we'll see. I'm going to take the points. I think they win the game outright, but I'm going to take the points as a little bit of insurance, and I'll probably look like an idiot for doing it, but that's okay. Um, Colorado -3 at Texas Tech. Colorado's a good team now. They're just a
Yeah,
really good team.
I'm seeing that line now at -3.5. But
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll keep it at 3.5. I'll honor the current lines.
you can,
Um,
if you had it earlier, call it earlier. I don't care.
I mean, like, I just like, again, we're not actually putting money down. This isn't gambling advice for anyone. It's just fun to try and pick against the numbers. I think Colorado's a really good team. I could see Texas Tech doing it, but like again, when this was announced as an afternoon game, I felt a lot better about Colorado not, sort of succumbing to an environment in Lubbock, Texas. So I'll take the Colorado to cover the -3.5. And again, if they don't, as a BYU fan, there's a little bit of like emotional insurance here, because if they don't cover it, that probably means that they lose. Like, I mean, I guess there's that 3.5 point little window where they could still win but not cover. But it's kind of a little bit of an emotional hedge there. Oregon's covering the 25 versus Maryland. That's just kind of an open and shut thing. So I will take that. TCU -10 versus Oklahoma State. Quit watch factor. Again, I think Oklahoma State's done. I think they're just ready for the season to be over. I have Alabama -2 at LSU. I think Alabama wins the game. I don't know. This one's fascinating because whichever team loses, man, those fans have got to be so disappointed. Um, just, I mean, with DeBoer, it's now going to be a referendum on if you hire the right coach, which is probably not fair, but it will happen. And then with Brian Kelly, it's like, okay, well, when is it going to happen? If it is going to happen, because we're year 3, and the best you've been able to do is 9-3, and that would be the ceiling on this year as well. Um, so I think Bama covers. I also have the over in that game, so over 58.5 points. I just don't trust either defense really, and I think the offenses are pretty good. But if you're going down to like which offense do I trust better, I trust the Kalen DeBoer offense more. So that's the thought process there. Another quit watch team, Notre Dame -25. Is it 26 now?
Yeah. Also, I've seen Bama at -3.
Okay, dang it. So,
It's
so I'm
yeah.
on the right side of these lines. That's good to know that I'm on like the right side. Things are moving more. That like I'm seeing the field, I think, pretty well. Um,
Yeah.
so
For state line, I'm seeing is -26.
Okay, yeah, that one's not a significant, like a key number there. It's not like it's going from like 7 to 7.5. So yes, Notre Dame will cover that. FSU will lie down and play dead and go back to home. Um, and then my final play, BYU Utah under 42 points. I think it's a slugfest. I think, again, like, unless things really start to snowball, and that would probably be in a BYU route, I don't see this going over the total. I don't. Utah's not going to score enough points.
Yeah. Also seeing that line going down to 41.5. So you're on the right side. Take the 42,
Fine.
dude.
No.
There was another line that you said of like how the total was, and I saw it moving down. I was like, oh, that's surprising.
Was it the 49 for Indiana, Michigan?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It's 48.5. Yeah.
Okay, it's at least like encouraging. Like, nope, nope. You're seeing it the way that at least more of the money is seeing it. It's kind of
Yeah.
just, it's fun to play that game. But yeah, those are my picks. I can quickly summarize them one more time. Miami -11 at Georgia Tech. South Florida +3.5 versus Navy. Michigan and Indiana under 48.5 points. Ole Miss +3 versus UGA. Colorado -3.5 versus Texas Tech. Oregon -25 versus Maryland, TCU -10 versus Oklahoma State, Alabama -3 at LSU. I'm also taking the over 58.5 total points in that game. Notre Dame minus 26 versus FSU, and then BYU Utah under 41.5 points.
That sounds like a lot of great picks, Steve.
We'll see. We'll see. Like, knowing my luck, it will run out this week. Because I really sprayed the board. After a week where I only did 6, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So really
Yep.
healthy amount.
My worry is also that I'm agreeing with you on a lot of these picks, and I know the pendulum's got to swing back at some point in time. I'm up 14 against the spread, but we'll see. Give me Iowa minus 6.5 against UCLA. UCLA has had a really good run defense, and Iowa has relied on the run in the last little bit. They've got a quarterback that just had his first start last week. I think they only threw for like 10 passes in that game, but Iowa scored 40 points in the last 2 games. So don't look now, but give me Iowa to cover 6.5 at UCLA. Like you, Miami's on the revenge tour. Give me Miami minus 11.5 against Georgia Tech. They got to make
it's
up.
11.5 now.
No, sorry, 11. Sorry, you're right.
Okay.
11. Give me Clemson minus 6.5 against Va Tech. They fumbled the ball, fumbled their position. They're going to do everything they can to put themselves in a spot to be successful. So give me them to cover. Like you again, I'm also Colorado minus 3.5 at Texas Tech. That Colorado team has life. They've been great. They've been good this year. They have even more life breathed into them. They're not going to let that stop them. I am on the opposite side of this UGA Ole Miss pick for you. I'm giving UGA minus 2.5 at Ole Miss. The Dogs' defense can turn it on when they need to. That defensive line is incredible. I think it's going to give Jackson Dart some struggles. That Ole Miss offense has struggled a few times. And if you watch the Florida game, they started not passing the ball as deep, and Beck started to kind of dial it in. And I think that's the game plan: is keep it within 10, 15 yards. Don't throw the ball super far down the field, and they've got a chance. The one thing that they're missing is a running back, and I mean they got Etienne, but give me UGA to find a way to win that one. Let's see. Also, I am on the side of Oregon against Maryland minus 25. In my head, that one's like a 38-7, 38-10 kind of game. So I think they'll be fine there. You mentioned the Michigan-Indiana game, the under. I think that's actually a good play, but I'm not going to pick it. I'm going to pick Indiana to cover the 14. I do see this game being, though, a 35-10 kind of game, maybe 35-17, and I think that still covers on the top of my head. So, give me Iowa State minus 3 at Kansas, kind of at Kansas. Iowa State's got to make sure they continue to keep everything on board so they have a shot to make the Big 12 championship. And I think they do everything they can in their power. Give me OU to beat Missouri. OU, the line's +1. I'll take the +1. It's essentially there. But Missouri, I don't know if Brady Cook plays in this game. OU had a chance to kind of play around with the offense, get some good feelings in their life again last week. Give me them a chance to really put Missouri at
I strongly considered that one too. I think you're on the right side of that one.
Yeah, and then also with you, Bama minus 3. I think this Kalen DeBoer coach is going to play this right, and give me also the over 58.5. One, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 picks. Is that right? Yep. Okay, that's all my picks this week.
Okay, healthy board for both of us. I'll go ahead and type mine in later. Anything else before we wrap?
Honestly, no. I'm just hoping that my picks end up being great this week because I went 6-3 and I lost to you. I mean, come on.
That's the fluke of all flukes. So I'm sure I'll come back down to earth this week. But again, it is always fun to just kind of see, where Vegas is right, where we think they're wrong, and what ends up happening, what ends up being reality. But yeah, we'll leave it at that. We're excited for another week of football, a couple rivalry games, a little bit more of the playoff situation starting to shake out. Playoff rankings come out this week. I don't know if you had any predictions on that. I'm putting you on the spot there. We didn't
Yeah,
even
no,
talk
I was
about
going
this
to say
before.
Indiana's lower ranked and lower respected than they think they should be. That's what I think happens.
I think that with them and with BYU, both of them.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I agree with that. And then they're going to set this up to put as many SEC and big SEC teams in here as much as they can.
Yeah, the
Again, it won't happen right away because they'll get appease the masses and they don't want uproar for 4 weeks. But look for reasons to put a 2 or 3 loss SEC team in over a 1 or 2 loss Big Ten or Big 12 or ACC team.
definitely, definitely, it's gonna happen. I feel like they're already talking about it. So
Yep.
the fix is in. I hate the system that we're in, and how the broadcasting networks are so in control of the sport. It's absolutely terrible and needs to be wrestled away from them by some other more benevolent power broker, which doesn't exist, which is a problem.
They just need a commissioner. Essentially, is what they need.
Yeah, someone to take the bull by the horns and say, nope, nope, this is how we're going to do it, and you're going to get on board with it, or you're not going to be participating. So,
Yes.
just yeah, it's it's dumb. I can at least appreciate that Greg Sankey, who's like a top time just demon of the sport, is now at least like being honest, where he's like, oh, I'm not going back. Like he's now kind of at least showing his true colors, which okay, you've been dishonest for like 15 years, so at least you're being honest about what you're doing and your intentions now. I hate it, but it is what it is. So
Expound.
uh,
I'm not quite sure I follow what you're talking about.
I just like there was a quote at one point where he's just like, "Hey, we're not gonna like have pity on these other conferences. Like, I'm not gonna water down my product because they weren't doing the, like basically like I'm out here serving my conference. It's not my job to make sure the sport of college football is in a healthy spot. It's my job to like promote my teams." And so it's like, of course, like, well, he's kind of finally just like embracing like the villain, like being like, "Hey, I'm so powerful now that it doesn't matter. I can be an a-hole and no one cares." Like, but yeah, screw that guy. Like, that's all I have to say about him. I don't like him. Yeah, we can leave it on that note. Unless you got something else.
Nah, screw that guy.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thanks for tuning in again, everyone, and we'll see you next week to react to week 11 and talk through week 12. Peace.